Hello, everyone, and welcome to Harv's World, where we are taking a look at field preparation. Now, field preparation, I think, is one of the places that people get hung up on and a little bit intimidated by, or confused by, I guess I should say, especially new players, old hands that have been doing this for a long time. Obviously, this is going to be a non-issue for you. You figured it out. You know what you're doing. But for the newer players out there that I like to see get started and do well, I'm just going to show them a few things and the proper orders for preparing your field under different circumstances. We're going to be looking at what if a field needs to be plowed. We're going to look at what if a field needs lime. And what order do I handle those different tasks when I'm getting my field ready. Now, everything that I tell you is going to apply to every crop in the base game. This will work on anything. The only thing that might change is that you will use a planter instead of a seeder, or you might need a potato planter or something to plant poplars with. But regardless of whether you're using a seeder, a planter, a potato planter, a poplar planter, this will all apply. So it's just a matter of different tools. Like I said, I'm only using base game tools, and for the time being, I'm only going to be using single purpose tools. So I won't be using any kind of a combination tool until the end, and I will address a direct drill combination seeder fertilizer very briefly. But what we're really talking about when we're talking about field preparation is change of field state. And what that means is, right now, if I look at my field, you can see the state of the field is harvested. This is what a harvested field looks like, and that is one of the many field states your field can have. A change in field state means that I have essentially changed the look of it, for lack of a better definition, but also have changed where it is in the preparation process. So some of the things that will change field state is applying fertilizer. That's one field state. Plowing will change a field state. Lime will change a field state. Seeding or planting will change the field state. And cultivating will change the field state. So there's many things that you can do to change the field state. And the reason that's important is because if you apply fertilizer, and we know at this point that every crop needs 2 applications of fertilizer. If you apply fertilizer once, you cannot apply fertilizer again until you've changed the field state. And so that's where field preparation order comes into effect. Now, how do we know where our field is? Well, we're going to take a look at our map. We are down here on field 34. We're going to go right to soil composition. And I can see right now, here on field 34, that we need plowing. Now, you may not have plowing turned on in your game. It's really your choice. If plowing's not something you enjoy doing and you want to remove that from your game, be my guest. But for those who do want to have the periodic plowing turned on, and that is in the settings right here, you can turn that on or off. We have it on, obviously, for this demonstration. Plowing is generally only required often when you buy a new field. The game will require you to plow that field once, and then the only other time you will need to plow is if you plant corn, potatoes, sugar beets, or poplar. So after you harvest each of those crops, the game will require you to plow. But with plowing, all it does is add one more trek down the field or across the field, one more pass. So what are we going to do if our field requires plowing? Well, I will tell you. The first thing we're going to do if it requires plowing is we're going to put fertilizer on that field. That may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but I will explain why in a minute. So, as you can see, as the fertilizer goes down, the field state is changing. Now it looks like a wet harvested field, for lack of a better description. But the field state is changing to a fertilized field. And what that means is we cannot go back over that with fertilizer again. So I'm going to do a couple strips of fertilizer here, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so there's a good section of fertilizer on the field at this point, and now, as we know, we still need plowing. Now, I am using a subsoiler rather than a plow, just because I like the squared off tools better. Subsoilers and plows, if you don't know, do exactly the same thing with only one exception. Plows can create new fields, subsoilers cannot. But a subsoiler is going to give us a plowed state, so I'll pull up with my subsoiler, drop it to the ground, and run this down the field. Now you can see, again, we are changing our field state. It's going from harvested to plowed. And you can see the difference. It's pretty patently obvious. So let me run a few passes with the subsoiler, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I've done a few passes with the subsoiler, and if we look at our map now, you can see I missed a little spot, so I will touch that up real quick. But you can see that that portion of the field no longer needs plowing, and it does have an application of fertilizer. Now, I did click off the lime button. We're going to approach lime separately, so we're not going to focus on that at the moment, just on whether the field needs plowing. So let me hit that little spot that I missed. I don't suppose I really have to, but for the sake of this demonstration, let's just make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. This won't take but a second. One more little spot right here, and then we will move on. Alright, that should do us. So now that we have our field plowed, what's the next step? Well, at this point you have options, but I'm going to do it in a way that seems most realistic to me. You can alter this once you get more comfortable, and do it however you prefer, but now I am going to seed. So we're going to get crops in the ground here. This is just a seeder. It doesn't do anything else. And you remember that after plowing, you can seed directly. So that's one of the field states where you can start putting seed in the ground. Once you've plowed, seeds are an option. So we're going to turn our seeder on. It's already full. We're just going to put wheat, and we're going to start down this field, and you can see behind us once again our field state is changing. Field state is now seeded or planted if you're using a planter for, say, corn. If you're using a potato planter, you'll see a different graphic image on the field, but still you're doing the same thing, planting potatoes. If you're doing poplars, same thing. You'll see little trees sticking up out of the ground, but it's done the same thing. It's just creating a seeded, planted state. And I'll just do one more quick pass, and I'll see you at the other end. Okay, so I've just done a couple strips of planting there, and now we kind of have an opportunity, and I will show you what I mean here in just a second when I drop off the seeder. So now you can see we've got our field in multiple states. We've got seeded, we've got plowed, we've got fertilized, and we have untouched. So just in this strip now, we've set up 4 different states on our field. Now, that's not important. What's important is that you don't have that happening. You want to cover your whole field with each of these passes. I think that's pretty obvious. Everybody should know that at least. So The final step in this process now that we've got our seeds in the ground is to put our second coat of fertilizer on. Well, I thought I could get a helper to do that. Yeah, there we go. And you can see our second application of fertilizer is going on there, no problem, changing that field state one last time. And with this pass of fertilizer, you're all done. You now get to go home, put your feet up, have a cup of coffee, drink a beer, whatever it is you prefer. But this field prep is done. All you have to do is wait now to break out the harvester when it's ready to harvest. So, the steps that we've gone through to take care of this field when it requires plowing is: step 1, fertilize. Step 2, plow. Step 3, seed. And step 4, fertilize. So that is your process if your field needs plowing. Now I'm going to reset this field. I'm basically going to reset the day, and then we are going to look at what if our field needs lime. Be right back. Okay, so I'm all reset and ready to go, and we're going to look at our field one more time. Back here on the field 34 to our soil composition. It says it still needs plowing. That's because I just jumped back in time. We're going to turn that off, and we are going to assume that this field needs lime only, which it does. And the reason it's only showing partially is because it's only a partially harvested field, just enough for this example. But what is our process if we have to put lime on the field? Well, it's not that much similar from, or not that much different, not that much different from when we needed to plow, but it is just a little bit more involved. So, and not involved is probably the wrong word, but we are going to start with fertilizer. It just takes one extra step, potentially one extra step. So again, we are going to start with fertilizer. Again, I was hoping to get a helper to help this task. And of course, we're still talking about field states, and there goes our fertilizer state one more time. You've seen this part already, so I'm going to jump ahead, and I'll see you in 10 seconds with our next step. Okay, so I've just done that couple passes of fertilizer again, and our next step, what's our next step going to be? Anyone know? Bueller? Anyone? Our next step is going to be to apply lime. Now, lime is also one of those things that you can turn on or off in the game menu. You don't have to play with lime if you don't want to. Again, if we go here, we can see lime required, on or off. Now, if you choose to play with lime, your field will generally need lime the first time you purchase it, and then the only other time you need lime on your field is after each third harvest. So when you plant and harvest 3 times, the 4th time you will need to put lime on the field. And we can see as lime's going on this field, again, a change of field state. This one's pretty dramatic because it turns your field white. Big surprise, huh? So, again, limed field state, and I will do a few passes and get this ready for the next step. Be right back. Okay, so there's our field all perfectly limed. We now have a lovely white lime covered field. Now, you don't have to put lime on the field if you don't want to. I mean, even if your field is calling for it, you can still plant crops and all of that jazz. No problem whatsoever. However, you will take a 15% yield reduction if your field needs lime and you don't put it on. So that's something to keep in mind also. So our third step in the process with lime is to cultivate. Now you could plow at this point, anything that prepares the soil for planting. We haven't done that yet, so we need to cultivate this field and get it ready to accept seed. And again, there goes our field state changing to a cultivated state. So I will be back when this field is cultivated. Okay, so there our field has been cultivated, a good portion of it anyway, enough for our purposes. So the next thing we do, I'm sure you know at this point, is to grab our seeder, our planter, our potato planter, or our poplar planter, and jump on this field and get some seed in the ground. Get lined up here. Turn our seeder on. Drop it down. And again, there goes that change of field state that we've been talking about so much to a seeded state. So I'll do a couple quick passes here and we'll move on to the final step in this process. Okay, now that we've got our seed in the ground, I'm sure you all have guessed the final step at this point. Not difficult. There's only one thing left to do before we can go play with the dog. And that's going to be to put our final application of fertilizer on this field. And there we go, that's it. So what do we do if our field needs lime? Well, the first thing we're going to do is fertilize. Next is lime. Third is cultivate. Fourth is seed, plant, whatever. And last, we put on a coat of fertilizer. So 5 steps, and we can go home and watch TV, talk to the wife or husband, give a ball of string to our cat, whatever we do for fun. That is all it takes to get your field completely ready for harvest if your field needs lime. Now we're going to do just a couple other quick field preparations. I am going to reset this field so that it needs neither plowing nor lime, and we can see exactly what that process requires. So hang tight and I will be right back. Okay, so as you can see, I have completely reset this field. There's nothing in it. And if we take a look at our soil composition now, it needs neither lime nor plowing. All it needs is to be prepared for whatever crop we want to put in it. So the question is, what do we do first? Well, I bet you can guess. We're going to fertilize first. Get an application of fertilizer on first. That's pretty easy to remember. Always fertilize first. I lined up poorly, but that's okay. We're not doing the whole field. And remember, I'm only showing you a small portion. Every step that you take should be done across your entire field, not in small sections. That is just for the examples today. I realize that I'm saying something that most people will be obvious, but I guess I've talked to too many attorneys in my life and feel the need to specify every minute detail. So normally, yes, we would keep this going until we covered the whole field with fertilizer before we start our next step. So let me knock out this one more pass and we'll go on to step 2. Okay, so there's our fertilizer on the field. And what's step 2? you should know this by now too, or also, we've got to cultivate. I probably should have just bought a bigger cultivator so I could only do, you know, like one quick pass, but we've got this one and it'll work for us. So, you know, at this point, we changed the field state with fertilizer. Now we're changing the field state again with the cultivator. And I'll see you in a few passes. Okay, so that's cultivated. Yeah, at least most of it. Enough for our purposes. And I would be 99% sure that each and every one of you at this point knows exactly what the next step is. Because what does cultivating do for us? It prepares the soil for planting, seeding, whatever you're putting in the ground. Oh, well, as long as you don't wreck your equipment, which I've been prone to do since I began playing, and I haven't quite gotten over it, but after cultivation always comes seeding. So we are going to get a couple rows of seed in the ground, and we'll be back for the final step as we watch our field change state one more time. Alright, so there we go. We've got our seed in the ground. Drop this seeder off, and at this point everyone knows exactly what I'm going to say next. There's almost no point in saying it, but I feel the need to complete this. And our final step is to get that second application of fertilizer on the ground. So that is what we're going to do. So, if we just have a normal field that doesn't need any fertilizer, or doesn't need any plowing, doesn't need any lime, what are our steps? Well, we fertilize, we cultivate, we seed or plant, and we fertilize. And then we can go home, kick back, and wait for our crops to be ready for harvest. So at this point, I'm going to address one last topic before we wrap up this video. And I will see you when the field is reset and ready to go. Okay, so I have reset the field. If we go look at our field once again, it does not need lime, it does not need plowing, it is an empty field. And the issue that I'm going to address right now is multi-use tools. Again, this is base game only. I have not used any mods. But what I've got here is the Horsch Pronto 9DC. And what the Horsch Pronto 9DC does for us, well, it will seed and fertilize all at the same time, and it's considered a direct drill, which means that it does not need any kind of cultivation or plowing to do its job. So we're going to load this up with fertilizer, make sure it's topped off with seeds. I thought it was, but apparently it was not. So what this is going to do for us, it's going to reduce some of the steps in the field preparation process. It does throw one minor wrench in the works, which I will explain to you here shortly. But basically what we're doing now is effectively cultivating, seeding, and fertilizing all in one pass. So we're going to put that on, we're going to drop it down, and as we start across this field, you will see that it is changing the field state to a planted state. And if we look at our map as we go across, you can see that the blue indicates it is applying fertilizer. And if we look, we'll see that we also see that there's wheat going in the ground right here. So we're going to run a few passes on this, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so as you can see, I've done a few passes on this field. We are planted, we are cultivated, we are planted, and we are fertilized. Now, you might be thinking, well, that makes this nice and easy. I'll just go back in and throw another coat of fertilizer on there and be done. Well, let's see what happens. Let's grab our fertilizer spreader. Try to line up with it so that it will hook up properly. There we go. Jump on our field. Turn the spreader on. And uh-oh, look at that. Our fertilizer spreader is not changing our field state. Well, that's because when you use a multi-use tool like the Horsch Pronto that does essentially cultivating, seeding, and fertilizing all at the same time, the game assumes that the last thing that it does is fertilize, and you can't fertilize a fertilized field state. When your field is in a fertilized state, there has to be a change of state before you can fertilize again. Well, how do we get a change of state at this point? Simple enough. I'm going to show you. We are going to speed up time, significantly speed up time. And what we're waiting for is to see first growth. I hope it happens reasonably quickly before it turns dark. Although I can fix that little problem if I have to. There it goes. So now we've got first growth on the field. Another thing that changes field state is growth on the field. So now, if we jump on our field and not get too rambunctious, and you can see, now we are changing the field state again. It's got that wet look. We are getting our final application of fertilizer. So if we're using a multi-use tool, yes, it does speed things up quite a bit. However, it just throws a little bit of a waiting game into your field. Now, you can add this final application of fertilizer anytime after first growth and before it's in a ready to harvest state. That's when it turns nice golden brown and you can harvest it. You cannot fertilize once it reaches that point, but any time in between. So yeah, we've gone from a several step process to a 2-step process. It just means making a little bit of an adjustment. So that is my tutorial on field preparation. I hope this helps some people get started in the game. Maybe give some insight to people who've been playing for a little while but hadn't quite got a handle on it. Anything that will help you enjoy your time in Farming Simulator makes me happy. I appreciate you coming along for the ride, and if you found this video helpful, useful, or entertaining in some way, do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. There's plenty more to come. And until next time, take care.